So my question then is not rhetorical. Who are some of the people to thank God for? Who would you thank God for? If I said tonight, you got to thank God for somebody, who would you thank God for?
Wife.
Your wife. Excellent choice.
She's not even here.
She's not even here, but she'll see the video. Okay. Who else might we thank God for? Who do we thank God for regularly? Our husband, our children. Absolutely. Who else?
Parents.
Parents. Excellent.
Jesus.
Jesus. Definitely. Why? Why do we thank people for our spouse? What blessing are they upon us?
Their support.
Their support.
Best friend.
Best friend.
Balance.
Balance. Strength. Right? What about children? Why would we thank God for our children? They're hilarious. Excellent. Why else?
They stretch us.
They stretch us. Christ said that we're blessed by having children. How are we blessed by them? Why are we blessed by having a quiver full? By the way, a quiver held 20 to 30 arrows, by the way. Did you guys know that? Why are we blessed by having our quiver full of children? They bring joy into our life. They bring laughter. They bring a different perspective. What else?
Teach us patience.
Teach us patience. Oh, you be careful when you pray for patience. It'll give you children.
Well, they teach you the relationship between father and child, which I think is a direct correlation between father, Jesus and the father.
Very good.
Spiritual application.
Very good.
Really to understand the depth of the sacrifice that God gave.
Right.
Especially 2 in the morning.
Well, just the depth of how much you love them. You think about God sacrificing His only Son, and I think about it. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And what do we hear every new parent say? I can't believe I could ever love a child this much. And then what we hear every parent say when their second child is born is, I never thought I could love a child as much as I loved my first child. And absolutely the depth of that love and the depth of that understanding, which brings me to a little exercise for you to take with you, to practice when you go about, is to be mindful of your prayer. And we're kind of leapfrogging off what Paul does here, is when something catches your attention, when something kind of pops as a red flag and brings someone into your mind that you're thankful for, take a moment right then, not later that day, not an hour from then, whatever, take a moment right then and just thank God for them. Maybe you go down to Stater Brothers tonight and the cash register, a person at the cashier reminds you of an old friend. Take a moment to just thank God for that person. Maybe the cashier's having a bad day and you want to bless them as well, but take a moment. God reminded you of that for some reason. Perhaps you're driving to work in the morning and you hear a song on the radio, or maybe you're listening to a sermon or something, and something makes you think of that spouse. Take a moment. Keep your eyes open, but take a moment to thank God for them and wish blessings upon them, wish joy upon them. Send them an email or a text message or a quick phone call and say, I was hearing this song and I was just thinking about you and the blessing that you are in my life. How great would that be to get? Even something as simple as a text message from your spouse saying, you are such a blessing on me. Thank you for being my spouse. One thing I came across was I used to go down to Mexico. I've done it for a few years now because of my son being born, but I used to go down to Mexico and help build houses down in Rosarita, Mexico. And there was this guy, Jose, who was the foreman down there that set up everything up there. And he would always refer to me as Jefe. When first I thought he was making comments about my weight, and then I was explaining what Jefe meant. And whenever now I hear someone use that word Jefe, I think of Jose down in Rosarita, Mexico, and just that blessing that he always was, and that positive, and that servant's heart that this man had. So just that word even reminds me of this individual, and when I hear that word, I stop and wish well in his ministries and wish well in his life, and hope all is still good with him. So be mindful of your prayer. Let all things spark prayer and thanks for blessings in your life. When something comes up, there was some reason you thought of that person all of a sudden, or someone was put on your heart or your mind, if there's someone that you are thankful for, be thankful to them. Okay, partnership in the gospel, verses 4 and 5. The study verses for this are Colossians 2:5, 2 John 4, Philemon 7, and Ephesians chapter 2, verse 19. These are all areas where it talks about partnership in the gospel. Partnership. Partnership comes from a Greek word, koinonia, which is like we would use it when it comes to a business relationship. To a certain degree, even a marriage. What kinds of things do we look for in a good business relationship? Responsibility is one, isn't it? That you want to know that you can rely on that person, that they're trustworthy, that they'll open that store on time, that they'll close it on time, that they'll make sure those books are balanced and so forth. A whole idea of mutual support, that where your weaknesses start, their strengths also start. That what you can't carry, what you can't do, they can do. And that balance that happens between them. Again, whether it's in a business or whether it's in a marriage, we see both of those things being very true. For that matter, the idea of sharing in profits, or perhaps in a marriage, more sharing in blessings. That there is that sense of balance in this word that Paul's talking about with the idea of biblical partnership. And ideally, that whether it's in that business or whether it's in your marriage, that idea of best friends. That there can be a friendship relationship. We all like to go to a job where our friends work. We all kind of are skittish about going to a job where we don't really know anyone, or maybe we feel uncomfortable or the outsider or whatever. And from that friendship, ultimately, fellowship. So these ideas of responsibility, support, sharing of profits and blessings, friendship, fellowship, all of these things are coming back to this idea of koinonia, this idea of a partnership. Well, Paul's talking about the church in this, right, and us with our relationship with God. How then, again, not a rhetorical question, how can you be a partner in Christ? How can you be Christ's partner? We hear the Bible talking about how he is the bridegroom and we're the bride. How can we be his partner then? Ministry? Being in the Word? What else? Submission? Good. Surrender. Prayer. Studying his Word, knowing who he is.
Offering our gifts and our blessings to him.
That he's already given us in the first place. Absolutely. So here's a question that for some of us will make us smile and nod, some of us maybe make us kind of cringe inwardly a little bit. Are you being a partner to Christ or a beneficiary? I've given an example before of when Jackie and I were getting married, we were all in this back room, all the grooms and groomsmen, and one of my groomsmen turned to another one and said, "You've been going to this church for about 15, 20 years now, right?" I said, yeah, about that long. And he said, "And I see you sitting in the front pew every Sunday." He's like, "Yep, every Sunday, just like clockwork. Wife and kids are sitting right next to me too." "Great, that's fantastic. What do you do here?" "What do you mean? What do you do here? You've been here 15, 20 years. Other than be a beneficiary, other than receiving, how are you a partner with the rest of us?" He didn't have an answer for that. I'm sure it gave him something to think about afterwards, is how am I giving back? How am I doing back? How am I being a partner versus just someone who's reaping the benefits of it? So Paul talks about in verses 4 and 5, "In all my prayers for all of you, I always pray with joy because of your partnership in the gospel from the first day until now." Paul's referring to them as partners, as someone who's sharing with them, not simply someone who's a beneficiary. So, that leads me into the idea of from what we should be doing to what God is already doing. In verse 6, the whole idea of God is the great finisher, which is something I keep recently hearing people talking about. I talked about when you hear a song or you hear a sermon, you hear something that kind of clicks in the back of your brain. This is something I keep hearing people talk about, is what God starts, what God allows, what God... And ultimately where we want to take that whole line of conversation to is, what does God finish? What does He finish?
Everything He begins.
Everything He begins. Absolutely. He will finish everything that He chooses to start. Whether it's in us, whether it's in the world, whatever the case may be. Hebrews 12:2 is a good example of that. 2 Thessalonians 1:11. 1 Peter 5:10. 1 Thessalonians 5:23. They all talk about how God is a finisher. That He's a starter, and He's a supporter all the way through, but ultimately, the big important one that people forget about sometimes is He is a finisher. Verse number 6 specifically says, being confident of this, that He who began a good work in you will carry it out to completion until the day of Christ Jesus. So He started it already, He's continuing it now, and He'll keep doing it till when? Till glory comes, right? He will continue to work on that. He will continue to work in us with those things. We see a couple other examples in here specifically. When you think of God, we think of beginnings. For instance, Genesis 1:1. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Or John 1:1. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. What we forget, what we want to remember, what we want to bring into our life, especially when people bring up questions to us saying, why does God allow this in my life? Why is God doing these things? And misunderstanding and misquoting and misinterpreting, is we often forget that God is our great finisher as well as beginner. That He sees a project, a work through each step of the way. This has been beat into my mind in a whole new way now as I'm building a patio off the back of my house. And I've done it once and I've done it wrong, so I'm going back and I'm putting in new beams with a couple of angels that keep helping me with it, and putting on a new roof and setting it right and setting it correctly. And the question came up at one point, when are we going to be done with this? We're going to be done with this when we're done with this. When the project is complete. Well, how long is it going to take? It's going to take as long as it takes. And that's the answer God gives us that we tune out sometimes. Dear Lord, how long is this going to go on? How long is this going to take? It's going to take as long as it takes. But there's something He intends. If He started that work in you, is God good?
Yeah.
Well, that was terrible. Is God good?
Yes.
Okay. If He's good, and He wants it, does He love us?
Yes.
Does He want the best for us?
Yes.
Then if He started it, and He's with us, He's going to finish it. And there's something, got to be something at the end, at the finish. My wife and I both run cross country, and I can speak for myself and her and a good number of the people out there that there's some point during that race, usually right around the 4th or 5th or 6th kilometer, where you're, why in the world did I sign up for this thing? This hurts, and my mouth is dry, and my knees are sore, and I just got passed by a little kid wearing Converse, for crying out loud. Why am I out here? Why am I doing this? There's some joy. There's some pleasantness. There's some excitedness. There's something special for you. If it's nothing else than personal fitness in that case, there's something for you at the other end. And sometimes it is just finishing. Sometimes it is just being better. Sometimes it's preparing you for something else. So, God has projects in our lives. He has, to use the word Paul uses, works in our lives, and He will see those through all the time. My question to you, though, is how is it easy or hard for you to trust in God to complete a work He started in you?